The crystal chandelier above table 7 cast fractured rainbows across Maya Chen's notepad as she approached with the evening's second bottle of Dom Perignon. The private dining room at Le Bernardin hummed with the kind of hushed intensity that only accompanied deals worth more than most people's lifetime earnings. She'd served this room hundreds of times over the past 3 years, invisible to the titans of industry who treated her like living furniture. But tonight felt different. Tonight, the air itself seemed to vibrate with possibility and danger. Marcus Rothwell, CEO of Rothwell Industries and the third richest man in America, according to Forbes, sat at the head of the mahogany table, his silver hair catching the light as he gestured dismissively at the quarterly reports spread before him. His empire stretched across technology, real estate, and manufacturing, a conglomerate worth $47 billion that had started with a single patent for semiconductor cooling systems 30 years ago. Maya had memorized these details not from financial magazines, but from 3 years of listening, observing, and filing away every conversation that happened within earshot of her careful steps. "The Southeast Asian markets are bleeding money," Rothwell's voice carried the casual authority of a man who'd never been told no. "Pull out of Vietnam entirely, close the Thailand operations, focus everything on India and Indonesia." Maya's hand tightened almost imperceptibly around the bottle's neck. She'd grown up in her grandmother's restaurant in Little Saigon, where every conversation over steaming bowls of pho centered on the economic miracle happening in Vietnam. Her cousin Lynn worked for a tech startup in Ho Chi Minh City, sending home stories of innovation hubs and young entrepreneurs revolutionizing manufacturing. Maya had spent her breaks between shifts reading Vietnamese business newspapers on her phone, translating articles about the emerging middle class and their hunger for premium products. "Sir, I'm sorry, but I couldn't help overhearing about Vietnam." The conversation died. 6 pairs of eyes turned toward her with the collective surprise of discovering their coffee table had opinions about foreign policy. Marcus Rothwell's eyebrows rose, his silver blue eyes focusing on her, as if seeing her for the first time despite 3 years of her refilling his water glass. "Excuse me?" His tone carried the polite bewilderment of a man unaccustomed to being interrupted by service staff. Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she'd crossed the line now. "Vietnam's middle class is expanding rapidly, and the government just announced major infrastructure investments in tech manufacturing. Pulling out now would be like..." She searched for an analogy these men would understand. "Like selling Apple stock in 1997. The silence stretched like a held breath. Daniel Kessler, Rothwell's chief financial officer, actually set down his fork. Sarah Wong, the head of international operations, blinked slowly as if Maya had just spoken in ancient Sanskrit. She could hear her own heartbeat in her ears, could smell the lavender soap she'd used to wash her hands, could feel the rough cotton of her uniform shirt against her suddenly damp skin. Then Marcus Rothwell laughed. It wasn't cruel exactly, but it carried the weight of $47 billion and 30 years of never being wrong. "Well, our waitress has opinions about macroeconomics." He looked around the table, inviting his colleagues to share in the novelty. "Tell me, Miss Chen, Maya Chen. Miss Chen, are you perhaps moonlighting from your MBA program at Wharton? Or maybe you've got a PhD in international business hidden under that apron?" The table chuckled dutifully. Maya felt something cold and sharp crystallize in her chest, but she kept her voice steady. "No, sir. I have a bachelor's degree in economics from Queen's College." "Queen's College," Rothwell repeated, as if the name itself explained everything. "Well, Miss Chen, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but Rothwell Industries didn't become a $47 billion company by taking investment advice from waitresses who read the news on their phone breaks. Vietnam is a manufacturing economy built on cheap labor. When that labor stops being cheap, the entire market collapses. We've seen it happen in Mexico, in Thailand, in Eastern Europe. It's basic economic evolution." Maya's grandmother fled Saigon in 1975 with nothing but the clothes on her back and a recipe for pho that would eventually feed 3 generations. She'd built a successful restaurant and sent 4 children to college. Maya thought of those calloused hands that had stirred soup for 15 hours a day, of the dreams whispered over late-night accounting books, of the fierce pride in Badagunai's eyes when Maya walked across the stage in her cap and gown. "With respect, Mr. Rothwell," she said quietly, "cheap labor isn't Vietnam's future. Their tech sector is growing at 23% annually. They're graduating more engineers per capita than South Korea. Vingroup just launched VinFast. Their EV subsidiary is planning to compete directly with Tesla in the US market. The Vietnam I know isn't trying to be the next China. They're trying to be the first in Vietnam." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Rothwell's smile faded, replaced by something harder and infinitely more dangerous. "The Vietnam you know?" His voice was silk wrapped around steel. "Miss Chen, I've been closing deals since before you were born. I've built factories on 4 continents and employed more people than live in most cities. When I want advice about Vietnam, I consult with the former U.S. ambassador to Vietnam, who happens to sit on my board of directors. I don't need lectures about macroeconomics from someone whose expertise comes from serving soup." Each word hit like a physical blow, but Maya had been hit before. By professors who looked at her accent and assumed she didn't belong. By classmates who asked where she was really from when she mentioned growing up in New York. By employers who praised her work ethic but never offered her advancement opportunities. She learned to absorb these impacts and transform them into something harder, something unbreakable. "You're absolutely right, Mr. Rothwell," she said, her voice carrying a calm that surprised even her. "You've built an incredible empire, and I'm sure your advisors are very qualified." I paused, letting the words settle. "But respectfully, your advisors don't send half their paycheck home to family in Ho Chi Minh City. They don't get WhatsApp messages from cousins who work 60-hour weeks at startups that didn't exist 5 years ago. They don't read Vietnamese newspapers or follow Vietnamese influencers or understand that the Vietnam you're thinking of disappeared 20 years ago." She straightened, feeling something shift inside her chest, something that had been building for 3 years of invisible service and swallowed insights. "I may just be a waitress to you, but I guarantee I understand that market better than any former ambassador who sees Vietnam through the lens of a war that ended before I was born." The silence that followed was profound, the kind of quiet that precedes earthquakes. Maya could hear the distant clatter of dishes from the main dining room, the soft jazz playing through hidden speakers, the whisper of climate-controlled air moving through the vents. She could smell Rothwell's expensive cologne, the lingering aroma of truffle oil from their appetizers, the faint scent of her own nervous sweat. Then Rothwell stood, slowly, his 6-foot frame unfolding with the deliberate precision of a man who'd spent decades commanding rooms full of powerful people. He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a money clip thick with $100 bills, peeling off 3 and laying them on the table. "Miss Chen, I think we're done here. Please send our compliments to the chef." Maya nodded, understanding that she'd just crossed the line that couldn't be uncrossed. As she turned to leave, she heard Daniel Kessler's voice, pitched low, but not quite low enough. "Jesus, Marcus, where do they find these people?" She paused at the doorway, not turning around, and spoke one last time to the room that had just ejected her from their world. "Mr. Rothwell, VinFast is trading on NASDAQ next month. Their IPO is oversubscribed by 400%. Samsung and Apple have both announced major manufacturing investments in Vietnam for 2024. And Grab, the Southeast Asian equivalent of Uber, just moved their regional headquarters from Singapore to Ho Chi Minh City. But I'm sure your advisors will figure all that out eventually." The walk to the service station felt like crossing a desert. Maya's hand shook as she set down the champagne bottle, as she pulled out her phone, as she typed a text to her manager. "Family emergency. Need to leave early. Can cover my tables tomorrow if needed." It wasn't entirely a lie. Something in her family was dying tonight, the version of herself that had accepted invisibility as the price of stability, who had swallowed her insights and expertise because she'd been taught that people like her were meant to serve, not to lead. In the employee break room,
Maya sat on a plastic chair and pulled out the notebook she'd been carrying for 3 years. Page after page of observations, insights, overheard conversations, patterns she'd noticed in the behavior of the wealthy and powerful, market predictions that had proven accurate, investment strategies that could have made fortunes, business models she'd sketched during quiet moments between rushes. For 3 years, she'd been collecting intelligence while they treated her like she didn't exist. Maya Chen had been invisible for the last time. This transformation didn't happen overnight. It took courage, preparation, and the willingness to risk everything. If this story is resonating with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear that their insights matter no matter what job they currently have. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found Ling's number. Her cousin picked up on the second ring, her voice bright with the energy of Ho Chi Minh City's perpetual rush hour. "Maya! Chioi, what's up? It's like midnight there, isn't it?" "Ling," Maya said, switching to Vietnamese, feeling the comfort of her mother tongue wrap around her like armor. "I need you to set up some meetings for me, with everyone you know in tech, manufacturing, and investment. I'm coming to Vietnam."
What? When? For how long? Maya looked around the break room one last time, at the motivational posters about teamwork, at the schedule that listed her as covering a double shift tomorrow, at the time clock that had measured her life in 37.5-hour increments for 3 years. "Permanently," she said. "I'm starting a company, and I need partners who understand what Vietnam really is, not what American billionaires think it should be." She could hear Lin's sharp intake of breath across 12,000 miles. "Maya, are you serious? What happened?" "I'm starting a company," she said simply, "and I need partners who understand what Vietnam really is." As she hung up the phone, Maya realized she was smiling for the first time in months. Tomorrow, she would start making calls. She would research flight prices and visa requirements. She would begin transforming 3 years of careful observation into something Marcus Rothwell had never imagined possible: competition. But tonight, she walked out of Bernardin with her notepad full of secrets and her head held high, leaving behind the comfortable prison of other people's expectations. Behind her, in the private dining room, Marcus Rothwell was probably ordering another bottle of champagne, secure in the knowledge that he'd handled an impertinent waitress with appropriate firmness. He had no idea that he'd just created his most dangerous enemy. Maya's studio apartment in Astoria felt smaller at 2 a.m., the walls pressing in like the weight of decisions that couldn't be undone. She sat cross-legged on her unmade bed, laptop balanced on her knees, surrounded by 3 years' worth of notebooks, printed financial reports she'd saved from the restaurant's recycling bin, and her grandmother's recipe box, the only possession that had traveled with her family from Vietnam to Queens to this cramped space that smelled perpetually of the Thai restaurant downstairs. The blue glow of her screen illuminated pages of scrawled observations. Rothwell's acquisition strategy always targets companies with less than 20% market share, vulnerable but established. Daniel Kessler mentioned Puerto Rico tax shelter 3 times in January, possible liquidity issues. Sarah Wong constantly checks phone during Vietnam discussions, distracted or disinterested. Maya had been an anthropologist of wealth for 3 years without realizing it, documenting the behavioral patterns of a species she'd thought she'd never join. Her phone buzzed with a text from her manager at Le Bernardin. "Maya, heard you left early. Everything okay? You're scheduled for lunch shift tomorrow." The concerned tone made her chest tight with guilt. James had been kind to her, accommodating her evening classes, letting her pick up extra shifts when her student loan payments came due. How do you explain to someone who's been good to you that their kindness has become a trap? She typed back, "Hi, James. I'm sorry, but I won't be able to work tomorrow. Or next week. I'm resigning.
I'll drop off my uniform tomorrow morning. Her thumb hovered over the send button for 5 full minutes before she pressed it, watching the words disappear into digital space with the finality of burning bridges. The response came immediately. What? Maya, you've been here 3 years. You're one of our best servers. Did something happen with a customer? We can work it out. Maya stared at the screen, remembering James training her on wine pairings, remembering his patient explanations of the difference between fine dining service and the casual restaurant work she'd done before. He'd seen potential in her, had recommended her for catering events that paid double. But potential for what? To become the best waitress in New York? To eventually manage other people serving other people's dreams? It's not about a customer, she typed back. I'm starting my own business. Thank you for everything, James. You taught me more than you know.
Pho Bangwai occupied a narrow storefront on Northern Boulevard, squeezed between a cell phone repair shop and a dollar store, marked only by a red sign with yellow Vietnamese lettering that most passers-by couldn't read. Maya had worked every position in this restaurant, washing dishes at 13, taking orders at 15, managing the books during high school when her grandmother's arthritis made holding a pen difficult. The smell hit her as soon as she opened the door. Star anise and onion, beef bones that had been simmering since dawn, the ghost of 10,000 bowls of soup that had carried her family from poverty to stability. Maya! Her grandmother looked up from the prep station where she was slicing herbs with the surgical precision of someone who'd performed the same motions for 40 years. At 73, Bangwai moved with the careful efficiency of someone who'd learned early that wasted motion was wasted money. "Gongai, what are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be at work?" "I quit," Maya said in Vietnamese, settling onto the stool beside the prep station where she'd done homework for 8 years of her life. Her grandmother's hands were still on the knife. "Quit? The fancy restaurant? The one with the rich customers who tip well?" "Yes, Ba." "Why?" Maya had practiced this conversation during the subway ride, but sitting in the familiar warmth of her grandmother's kitchen, the prepared words felt inadequate. How do you explain to someone who fled a war with nothing that you're walking away from financial security to chase a dream? How do you tell someone who built a life one bowl of soup at a time that you want to build an empire? "They don't see me," Maya said finally. "I've been watching them, learning from them, understanding their business better than they understand it themselves. But to them, I'm just furniture that refills their water glasses." Bangwai resumed her slicing, the rhythm of her knife against the cutting board like a meditation. "Invisible can be powerful," she said quietly. "People tell secrets to someone they don't see." "I know. I've learned so many secrets, Ba, about markets and money and how the wealthy think. But I'm tired of being invisible. I want to be seen." "What will you do?" Maya pulled out her notebook, flipping to the pages where she'd sketched her business plan during slow lunch shifts. "I'm going to Vietnam. I'm going to start a company that connects Vietnamese manufacturers with American consumers. Premium products, but affordable, using technology and supply chains to bypass traditional importers." Her grandmother studied the sketches, organizational charts and market projections in Maya's careful handwriting. She asked, "Like Grab?" "Similar model, different market. Why should Americans pay 3 times manufacturing cost for Vietnamese products just because they have to go through 5 middlemen? I want to build a direct bridge." "And you'll compete with your rich customers?" Maya smiled grimly. "Especially with my rich customers." Bangwai set down her knife and turned to face Maya fully. Her weathered hands, scarred from decades of kitchen work, reached out to cup Maya's face with surprising gentleness. "Jawa, listen to me. Your grandfather and I didn't leave Vietnam so you could go back there." The words hit harder than expected.
Maya had always assumed her grandparents would be proud to see the homeland they'd fled become the destination for her granddaughter's ambitions. But it's different now. I know what Vietnam is now. I watch the news. I talk to my sister in Saigon every week. I see the pictures Lynn posts on Facebook. It's beautiful, it's modern, it's full of opportunity. She paused, her thumb brushing away a tear Maya didn't realize had fallen. But we left so you could have choices. All choices. Not just the ones that take you back where we started. This isn't going back, Maya said, her voice thick with emotion she hadn't expected. This is going forward, using everything you taught me, everything America taught me, everything I learned serving rich people who think I'm too stupid to understand their conversations. I'm not running away from opportunity, Ba. I'm creating it. Her grandmother was quiet for a long moment, her dark eyes searching Maya's face. Finally, she nodded slowly. Your grandfather would have liked this plan, she said. He always said the best revenge against people who underestimate you is to prove them spectacularly wrong. They worked together for the next 3 hours, Maya falling back into the rhythm of restaurant prep like muscle memory, slicing onions until her eyes burned, portioning herbs into plastic containers, checking inventory against the supply list her grandmother kept in handwriting that hadn't changed in decades. It was meditative work, the kind that let thoughts settle and crystallize. Ba, I need to ask you for something. Money? No, well, maybe eventually, but not now. I need recipes, your supplier's contacts, the names of the importers you've worked with for 20 years. I need to understand the supply chain from the ground up. Her grandmother smiled, the first genuinely pleased expression Maya had seen from her all day. Those secrets I can give you, but Maya. Yes?
Don't forget where you come from. Rich people think money makes them smart. Poor people know survival makes them smart. You're about to find out which kind of smart is stronger. That night, Maya lay awake until dawn, her laptop showing flight booking pages she'd refreshed dozens of times without clicking purchase. On her nightstand, her grandmother had placed a small ceramic figurine of Guanyin, the goddess of mercy, wrapped in tissue paper that still smelled like star anise. For protection, Bangwai had said, and for remembering that strength can look like gentleness until the moment it needs to be steel. Maya's phone buzzed with messages from Lynn, 8 hours ahead in Ho Chi Minh City, where the business day was already beginning. Photos of office buildings and startup incubators, screenshots of job postings and apartment listings, a voice message in rapid Vietnamese that roughly translated to, "I told everyone you're coming and now half the tech scene wants to meet you." At 6 a.m., Maya finally clicked Book Flight. The confirmation email arrived immediately, making it real in a way that resignation letters and grandmother's blessings couldn't. She had 7 days to pack up 3 years of life in New York, to figure out what pieces of herself were portable and which ones needed to be left behind. She pulled up her banking app and started transferring money, $2,000 from savings to checking, leaving herself with $1,400 and a one-way ticket to a country she'd left as a child and was returning to as something harder, something more dangerous than the little girl who'd learned to count in English by tallying receipts at her grandmother's restaurant. Maya Chen was about to discover what happened when invisible people decided to be seen. If you're enjoying this story about turning underestimation into power, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe for more inspiring tales of people who proved the doubters wrong. But first, she had to learn the difference between being visible and being powerful. The first step was getting on a plane. The second step was remembering that the woman who'd served Marcus Rothwell's last meal was about to become someone he'd never ignore again. The humidity of Ho Chi Minh City hit Maya like a physical embrace as she stepped off the plane at Tan Son Nhe Airport, her single suitcase and laptop bag representing the complete portable assets of what would either become an empire
or the most expensive mistake of her life. The air was thick with motorcycle exhaust, street food aromas, and the electrical energy of a city that never quite stopped moving. 8 months had passed since she'd walked out of Le Bernardin. 8 months of 18-hour days, visa applications, and the kind of systematic preparation that would have impressed Marcus Rothwell if he'd bothered to notice. Lynn waited outside the arrivals gate, unchanged except for the new startup logo on her t-shirt and the kind of confident posture that came from living at the center of something important. Maya. She embraced her cousin with the fierce joy of family reunited. You look different. Thinner, but harder? I feel harder, Maya admitted, as they navigated through the crowd toward Lynn's motorbike. Watching the city pulse with ambition and possibility, I want to build a direct-to-consumer platform that cuts those middlemen out entirely. Maya Chen. I'm starting a war, a very polite, very profitable war.
That's why I'm here. I need partners who understand local manufacturing capabilities and can help me identify producers who can scale to American market demands while maintaining Vietnamese price points. Anch exchanged a look with Ling that Maya couldn't quite read. Maya, no offense, but what you're describing has been tried. Amazon tried to build direct manufacturing partnerships in Southeast Asia. Alibaba has been working on this model for years. The logistics are incredibly complex. Maya had anticipated this objection. She pulled out her laptop and opened a presentation that had taken her 3 months to perfect. Amazon and Alibaba are trying to be everything to everyone. They're massive platforms that need to work for every product category, every price point, every consumer demographic. The first slide showed market penetration data she'd compiled from industry reports and her own observations. I want to focus specifically on the premium lifestyle market: furniture, home goods, fashion accessories, artisanal products. Items that wealthy Americans currently buy from boutiques and galleries for prices that are frankly ridiculous. The next slide showed price comparisons that made Anch lean forward. A Vietnamese-made ceramic vase sells for $25 in Ho Chi Minh City, $60 on Alibaba, and $200 at West Elm. A hand-woven throw pillow costs $15 to manufacture here, sells for $40 on Vietnamese e-commerce sites, and retails for $120 at Pottery Barn. The markup is insane, Ling murmured. The markup is an opportunity, Maya corrected. American consumers aren't paying for the product. They're paying for the story, the brand, the assurance that they're buying something special. What if we could give them the same story, the same quality assurance, but at Vietnamese prices, plus a reasonable profit margin? Anch was studying the numbers with the intensity of someone recalculating everything she thought she knew. This would require incredible quality control, customer service infrastructure, marketing budget. And most importantly, Maya continued, it would require understanding American consumers better than American companies understand them. She clicked to the next slide, which showed customer behavior patterns she'd observed at Le Bernardin. Wealthy Americans don't just buy products. They buy identity markers. They buy conversation pieces. They buy items that make them feel sophisticated and globally aware. Vietnamese artisans create some of the most beautiful products in the world, but they're hidden behind layers of middlemen who strip away the stories that make products valuable to American consumers. The presentation continued for 40 minutes, covering supply chain logistics, quality assurance protocols, customer acquisition strategies, and financial projections based on conservative market penetration estimates. When Maya finally closed the laptop, Anch was quiet for a long moment. "This is either brilliant or catastrophically naive," she said finally. "Probably both," Maya admitted, "but 8 months ago, a billionaire told me I was too stupid to understand basic economics because I was just a waitress. I've been thinking about that conversation every day since." "What billionaire?" Maya smiled, feeling the first genuine warmth she'd experienced since landing in Vietnam. "Marcus Rothwell, CEO of Rothwell Industries,
$47 billion net worth, and absolutely no idea that he just created his own competition. 3 days later, Maya stood in a textile factory in District 12, watching workers create the kind of silk scarves that would retail for $300 at Bergdorf Goodman. The factory owner, Mr. Duke, spoke limited English, but his nephew translated as Maya explained her vision. He wants to know about minimum orders. American importers usually require quantities of 10,000 pieces minimum. Can you commit to that volume? Maya had done the math repeatedly. 10,000 silk scarves at $25 each would require an initial investment of $250,000, money she didn't have and couldn't borrow. Traditional wisdom said she should start smaller, test the market with limited inventory, and prove concepts before scaling. But traditional wisdom was what kept people like her serving people like Marcus Rothwell. Tell him I want to start with 1,000 pieces, but I want them to be perfect. Museum quality is perfect. I want each scarf to come with a card telling the story of who made it, where the silk came from, how long the design process took. I want American customers to feel connected to Vietnamese artisans, not just Vietnamese products. The translation took several minutes, with Mr. Duke asking questions that seemed to require increasingly complex answers. Finally, the nephew turned back to Maya with a puzzled expression. He says, "This is very unusual. American buyers usually want lowest prices, fastest delivery, no complicated stories. Why do you want to make it more expensive and complicated?" Because expensive and complicated is what American luxury consumers actually want. They just don't know it yet. That evening, Maya sat in her rented room in District 3, video calling her parents in Queens. The 12-hour time difference meant catching them during their morning routine. Her father drinking coffee before his shift at the post office, her mother preparing for her job at a medical billing company. "Gong," her mother's voice was tight with worry that crossed 8,000 miles without losing intensity. "Are you eating enough? You look thin." "I'm fine, Ma, just busy." "Busy with what exactly?" "Ling's parents say you're starting some kind of business, but they don't understand what kind." Maya had been dreading this conversation. Her parents had sacrificed enormously for her education, working double shifts and skipping vacations to keep her debt manageable. The idea that she would walk away from stable employment to chase entrepreneurial dreams in a country they'd never expected her to return to was, she knew, terrifying for them. "I'm building a company that connects Vietnamese manufacturers with American consumers," she said carefully, "cutting out middlemen to make Vietnamese products more accessible to American markets." "And you're making money doing this?" Maya looked around her sparse room, at the instant noodles that constituted most of her meals, at the budget she'd calculated and recalculated that showed her savings lasting exactly 4 months if she didn't start generating revenue soon. "Not yet, but I will." "Maya." Her father's voice carried the gentle authority that had guided her through childhood. "We didn't raise you to be comfortable with poverty. We raised you to be smart about opportunities. What you're doing sounds very risky." "Everything worthwhile is risky, ba." "Not everything risky is worthwhile." The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, covering familiar territory about stability and responsibility and the importance of having backup plans. Maya ended the call feeling emotionally drained but no less determined. Her parents' concern came from love, but it also came from a generation that had learned to value security above ambition, survival above dreams. She was going to prove that sometimes the most loving thing you could do for your family was to refuse to accept their limitations as your own. The next morning brought news that changed everything. "Maya!" Lynn burst into the coffee shop where Maya was having her daily meeting with potential suppliers, waving her phone with the excitement of someone who just witnessed history. "You need to see this. VinFast just announced their Q3 numbers. Their stock is up 40% since IPO. Samsung is moving their entire Southeast Asian R&D division to Ho Chi Minh City. And get this." She paused for dramatic effect. "Rothwell Industries just announced they're reevaluating their strategic withdrawal from Vietnamese markets due to unexpected growth indicators." Maya felt something cold and sharp crystallize in her chest. She'd been in Vietnam for 2 weeks, working 18-hour days to build relationships and supply chains, living on savings and optimism. And Marcus Rothwell, the man who dismissed her insights as the uninformed opinions of a waitress, was now positioning his company to benefit from the exact market trends she'd tried to warn him about 8 months ago. "There's more," Maya continued, scrolling through news articles on her phone. Business Insider just published an analysis of missed opportunities in Southeast Asian markets. They specifically mentioned Vietnam as the investment opportunity of the decade and criticize American companies for outdated assumptions about emerging markets. Maya pulled up the article on her own phone, scanning the analysis that validated everything she'd told Rothwell 8 months ago. The Vietnamese government's infrastructure investments had exceeded projections by 30%. The middle class was expanding faster than economists had predicted. Tech manufacturing was drawing investment from companies that had previously considered Vietnam too risky for serious capital allocation. Every prediction she'd made in that private dining room was coming true ahead of schedule. "He's going to come back," Maya said quietly, feeling the weight of inevitability. "Rothwell is going to reverse his withdrawal and try to establish Vietnamese operations exactly when the market is becoming most competitive. Is that bad for you?" Maya thought about the silk scarves she'd ordered, the ceramic artists she'd met, the network of relationships she was building one conversation at a time. She thought about Mr. Duck's nephew asking why she wanted to make things more expensive and complicated. She thought about her parents' worry and her grandmother's blessing, and the moment when Marcus Rothwell had looked at her like she was furniture with opinions. "No," she said, feeling something fierce and bright unfurling in her chest. "He's going to arrive in a market I've been studying for 8 months, with relationships I've been building since he was still calling Vietnam a dying manufacturing economy. He's going to try to compete with someone who learned his strategies by watching him eat $47 billion meals." That afternoon, Maya made a decision that would have terrified the woman who'd served champagne in Manhattan. She called every potential supplier she'd met, every artisan who'd shown interest in her direct-to-consumer model, every factory owner who'd listened to her explain American luxury markets. "I want to accelerate our timeline," she told each of them. "Instead of launching in 6 months, I want to launch in 6 weeks. I want to be fully operational before American companies realize what they're missing." The responses ranged from enthusiasm to bewilderment to outright concern for her sanity. 6 weeks wasn't enough time to establish quality control protocols, build an e-commerce platform, create marketing materials, establish shipping logistics, and handle the 1,000 details that separated ambitious plans from functional businesses. Unless you were willing to work 20-hour days, sleep on factory floors, and risk everything on the belief that being first mattered more than being perfect. Maya was.
Her 4th week in Vietnam brought the first real test of her strategy. She was visiting a ceramics workshop in Bát Trang, the traditional pottery village outside Hanoi, when her phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. "Ms. Chen?" The voice was professionally cheerful, with the practiced warmth of someone who made a living managing difficult conversations. "This is Jennifer Walsh from Rothwell Industries International Development Team. I understand you've been conducting market research in Vietnam." Maya felt her heartbeat spike, but kept her voice steady. "I'm sorry, who is this?" "We understand you previously worked in New York's hospitality industry and may have had contact with our executives. We're expanding our Vietnamese operations and would love to discuss potential consulting opportunities with someone who has your unique perspective on local markets." The words were diplomatic, but Maya heard the subtext clearly. Someone at Rothwell had remembered the waitress who'd lectured Marcus Rothwell about Vietnamese markets. Someone had connected her name to her current presence in Vietnam. Someone was concerned enough about what she might be doing to make a phone call. "I appreciate the call," Maya said carefully, "but I'm not available for consulting work. I'm rather busy building my own company." A pause. "Of course. What kind of company, if you don't mind me asking?" Maya smiled, watching an elderly potter shape clay with hands that had been perfecting the same motions for 50 years. The kind that competes with companies that don't listen to their waitresses. She hung up before Jennifer Walsh could respond, but the message was clear. Rothwell Industries was watching her.
They'd gone from dismissing her insights to tracking her movements in less than 9 months. The question was whether they saw her as a potential asset to acquire or a potential threat to eliminate. Maya suspected she was about to find out. That evening, she sat in her hotel room in Hanoi, surrounded by samples of ceramics, textiles, and wooden crafts. They represented the first phase of her inventory. Each piece was beautiful, affordable, and carried the kind of authentic artisan story that American luxury consumers would pay premium prices to own. But beauty and authenticity weren't enough if she couldn't get products to market before competitors arrived. She opened her laptop and began typing the most important email of her life. Subject: Partnership Proposal, Viet Craft Direct. Dear Ms. Nguyen, I know we discussed a gradual launch timeline, but market conditions have changed. Rothwell Industries is accelerating their Vietnamese market entry, which means we have approximately 4 weeks to establish a first-mover advantage in the direct-to-consumer artisan goods market. I'm proposing an emergency partnership structure. Vietbridge Logistics handles fulfillment and shipping infrastructure. I handle American marketing and customer acquisition. We split revenue 60-40 until initial investment is recovered, then 50-50 ongoing. I need an answer by tomorrow morning. After that, I'll be forced to pursue less optimal alternatives. This is our chance to prove that understanding markets matters more than having unlimited capital. Best regards, Maya Chen, founder, Vietcraft Direct. She sent the email at 11:47 p.m. Hanoi time, then lay awake until dawn, watching the ceiling fan rotate and thinking about the difference between calculated risks and desperate gambles. Her phone rang at 6:15 a.m. Maya? An's voice was energetic despite the early hour. I'm in, but we're going to need help. This timeline is insane. Good insane or bad insane? The kind of insane that either makes us rich or destroys us completely. When do we start? Maya looked out her hotel window at Hanoi's awakening streets, at the motorbikes and street vendors, and the purposeful energy of a city that had rebuilt itself from nothing and was now building toward everything. We already started, 8 months ago, when a billionaire taught me that being underestimated is the most powerful competitive advantage in the world. The Vietcraft Direct website went live at 3:47 a.m. Ho Chi Minh City time on a Tuesday in October, 6 weeks after Maya's conversation with Jennifer Walsh and exactly 9 months after she had walked out of Le Bernardin. The homepage featured a hand-thrown ceramic vase created by master artisan Nguyen Van Dukes, photographed in natural light with a story card explaining his 40-year journey from apprentice to master potter. Price, $89 including international shipping. The same vase would retail for $340 at Crate & Barrel if Crate & Barrel had bothered to source directly from Vietnamese artisans instead of through wholesale importers who stripped away every trace of the creator's identity.
Maya refreshed the analytics dashboard obsessively for the first hour, watching a single visitor, herself, navigate through product categories she'd organized with the precision of someone who'd spent 3 years studying luxury consumer behavior. Silk scarves that told the stories of the families who'd woven them, wooden furniture crafted by artisans whose grandfathers had built temples that still stood after centuries, jewelry that connected contemporary American tastes to traditional Vietnamese techniques that predated the Silk Road. At 4:23 a.m., the visitor count jumped to 3, then 12, then 47. By 8 a.m., when An arrived at the co-working space they had rented in District 1, Maya was staring at numbers that didn't seem possible. 2,847 unique visitors, 127 items added to shopping carts, and, most importantly, 23 completed purchases totaling $1,893 in revenue. The customers were scattered across the United States, a ceramic vase shipped to Seattle, a silk scarf to Manhattan, a set of wooden bowls to Austin. Each order represented someone who'd found the website through Maya's carefully researched social media strategy and decided that authentic Vietnamese craftsmanship was worth paying for. Maya? Aunt's voice was careful, like someone afraid of disturbing a delicate spell. These numbers, are they real? 23 orders in 4 hours, Maya confirmed, pulling up the customer list. Average order value of $82, 0 customer service complaints. And look at this,
She clicked to the traffic analytics. 73% of visitors are spending more than 3 minutes on the site. They're reading artisan stories. They're engaging with the content exactly the way I predicted they would. On sat down slowly, studying the dashboard with the expression of someone watching magic happen in real time. How did they find us? We haven't done any advertising. Maya pulled up another screen showing social media engagement metrics. Instagram and Pinterest. I've been posting artisan stories and behind-the-scenes content for 6 weeks, building an audience of people interested in authentic craftsmanship and ethical consumption. When I announced the website launch yesterday, the posts were shared by accounts with followings I never expected to reach. She clicked through to show on the social media analytics. At Authentic Livin', 47,000 followers had shared Maya's post about Master Duck's pottery workshop. At Ethical Fashion, 23,000 followers had featured the silk scarf collection. At Mindful Home has created an entire story series about Vietcroft Direct's direct-to-artisan model. But how did these influencers even see your content? Maya smiled, remembering the night she'd spent researching hashtag strategies and engagement patterns instead of sleeping. I studied them the same way I studied wealthy customers at Bernardin. I learned their posting schedules, their content preferences, their audience demographics. I created content that aligned with their values and aesthetics, then posted at times when they were most likely to be browsing. When you understand your audience well enough, you don't need an advertising budget. You just need to give them exactly what they didn't know they were looking for. The phone rang before An could respond. Maya glanced at the caller ID, a New York number she didn't recognize. Vietcraft Direct, this is Maya. Hi, Maya. This is Rebecca Chen, no relation, I assume, from the New York Times Style section. I saw your website featured on several lifestyle Instagram accounts this morning, and I'm wondering if you'd be available for an interview about direct-to-artisan e-commerce. We're working on a piece about emerging sustainable luxury brands. Maya felt her heartbeat spike. The New York Times wanted to interview her about a website that'd been live for less than 12 hours. I'd be happy to discuss that. When were you thinking? Would this afternoon work? We could do a video call, and I'd love to include some photos of your Vietnam workshop visits if you have them. After scheduling the interview, Maya hung up and turned to find An staring at her with something approaching awe. The New York Times wants to interview you about a 12-hour-old website? Apparently. Maya, do you understand what's happening here? This isn't normal growth. This is viral. Maya pulled up the website analytics again, watching the visitor count climb past 5,000. I know exactly what's happening. American consumers are hungry for authentic stories and ethical consumption, but they've been trained to accept overpriced products with fake provenance because that's all the market has offered them. We're giving them the real thing at prices that actually make sense. The phone buzzed with a text from an unknown Vietnamese number. Miss Chen, this is Duke from Bat Trang Pottery. My nephew showed me your website. You sold 17 of my vases this morning. Is this correct? Maya tagged back quickly. Yes, Mr. Duke, and we're going to need more. Much more. The response came immediately. I need to call my sons. They are potters too. Can you sell their work also? By noon, Maya had fielded calls from 8 artisans who'd heard about Vietcraft Direct through word-of-mouth networks that moved faster than any social media algorithm. The silk weaver in District 12 wanted to know if Maya could handle larger orders. The furniture maker in Hanoi was asking about expanding beyond wooden bowls to include larger pieces. The jewelry artisan in Hoi An was requesting a partnership meeting to discuss exclusive designs.
But the call that changed everything came at 2:17 p.m., just as Maya was preparing for her New York Times interview. Maya Chen. The voice was crisp, professional, and familiar in a way that made her stomach drop. This is Daniel Kessler from Rothwell Industries. I believe we've met. Maya remembered Daniel Kessler perfectly, Chief Financial Officer, Marcus Rothwell's right hand, the man who'd made the "where do they find these people" comment after her Vietnam market prediction. Now he was calling her directly, using a tone that suggested this conversation had been carefully planned. Mr. Kessler, what can I do for you? I understand you've launched an e-commerce venture focusing on Vietnamese artisan goods. Congratulations on your early success. Our market research team has been tracking your website's performance, and it's quite impressive. The words sent a chill down Maya's spine. Rothwell Industries had a market research team tracking her 12-hour-old website. They weren't just aware of her existence, they were actively monitoring her business in real time. Thank you, she said carefully.
though I'm curious how your market research team even knew to track a startup that launched this morning. A pause. Maya, let's speak frankly. When you made your market predictions about Vietnam 9 months ago, Mr. Rothwell was skeptical. But your predictions have proven remarkably accurate. VinFast's performance, Samsung's investment, the infrastructure growth, you were right about everything. I usually am. Yes, I'm beginning to understand that, which is why I'm calling with a proposition. Rothwell Industries is expanding our Vietnamese operations significantly. We're looking for local market expertise, and someone with your insights would be invaluable as a consulting partner. Maya felt something cold and sharp crystallize in her chest. A consulting partner. We'd be prepared to offer you a very generous contract, enough to make your current venture unnecessary. The silence stretched between them, filled with implications that neither of them needed to state explicitly. Rothwell Industries was offering to buy her off before she could become a real competitive threat. They'd gone from dismissing her insights to fearing her competition in less than a year. Mr. Kessler, Maya said finally, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not interested in consulting for companies that think waitresses are too stupid to understand basic economics. Maya, that was a misunderstanding. No, it wasn't. It was Marcus Rothwell revealing exactly what he thinks of people like me. And now that my people are proving him wrong, he wants to hire me to clean up his mistakes. She paused, letting the words settle. Tell Mr. Rothwell that I'm not available for purchase, but he's welcome to visit Vietcraft Direct's website if he wants to see what Vietnamese markets actually look like. She hung up before Daniel Kessler could respond, her hands shaking with adrenaline and something fiercer than anger. Rothwell Industries was afraid of her. A $47 billion corporation was concerned enough about a 12-hour-old website to offer acquisition terms before she'd even proven sustainable profitability. They understood what she was building better than she'd realized. The New York Times interview was scheduled at 3 p.m., which gave Maya an hour to compose herself and prepare for questions that would determine whether Vietcraft Direct remained a promising startup or became a nationally recognized brand. She pulled up her notes, reviewed her talking points, and reminded herself that she'd been preparing for this conversation for 3 years without knowing it. At exactly 3 p.m., Rebecca Chen appeared on her laptop screen, a woman in her 30s with the kind of casual sophistication that marked experienced lifestyle journalists. Behind her, Maya could see the unmistakable skyline of Manhattan, a view that brought back memories of serving meals she couldn't afford to people who'd never bothered to learn her name. Maya, thank you for taking the time. I have to say, your website's launch has been extraordinary. We're seeing social media engagement that most brands spend months building toward. Thank you. Though I'd argue that we're not building a brand in the traditional sense. We're building relationships between American consumers and Vietnamese artisans. The website is just the platform that makes those relationships possible.
Rebecca leaned forward, clearly intrigued. Tell me about that. How did you develop this direct-to-artisan model? Maya had practiced this answer, but sitting in front of a New York Times journalist, she felt the weight of everything that had led to this moment. I spent 3 years working in New York's fine dining industry, serving customers who paid premium prices for products they assumed were authentically sourced. I watched people spend $300 on silk scarves that cost $25 to manufacture, not because they were being cheated, but because they were paying for a story they believed in. And you realized those stories could be authentic. I realized those stories should be authentic. American consumers want to feel connected to the things they buy, but the traditional import model strips away everything that makes products meaningful. When you buy a ceramic vase from Pottery Barn, you know nothing about who made it, where it came from, or why it matters. When you buy that same vase from Vietcraft Direct, you know the artisan's name, their family history, their artistic philosophy. You're not just buying pottery.
You're supporting a master craftsman whose techniques have been passed down through generations." The interview continued for 40 minutes, covering everything from supply chain logistics to cultural authenticity to the ethics of international commerce. Rebecca asked smart questions about scalability, quality control, and competitive advantages. But the question that mattered most came at the end. "Maya, you left a stable job in New York to start this company in Vietnam. That's a significant risk. What made you confident enough to take that leap?" Maya thought about Marcus Rothwell's dismissive laughter, about her grandmother's blessing, about the moment she'd realized that being invisible had given her the most valuable education in American consumer behavior anyone could ask for. "I wasn't confident. I was angry. Angry at being underestimated, angry at watching opportunities wasted, angry at a system that treats insight as irrelevant if it comes from the wrong person. But anger isn't enough to build a company. What sustained me was the realization that I understood both sides of this market better than anyone trying to connect them. I knew what American consumers wanted because I'd served them for 3 years. I knew what Vietnamese artisans could provide because I grew up in a family that had built something beautiful from nothing. The only thing missing was someone willing to build the bridge." And now? Maya glanced at her laptop screen where the Viet Craft Direct dashboard showed 47 orders and counting. "Now, I'm not angry anymore. I'm excited. Because we're proving that authentic stories and fair prices aren't just good ethics, they're good business." The article would be published in the Sunday Style section, Rebecca explained, with the potential for additional coverage if the company's growth continued to be newsworthy. Maya hung up the call feeling like she'd just crossed a threshold that couldn't be uncrossed. Her phone immediately rang with another unknown number. "Maya, this is Jennifer Walsh from Rothwell Industries. I believe we spoke briefly last month." Maya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of inevitability. "Hello, Jennifer? I'm calling to inform you that Rothwell Industries has filed a trademark dispute regarding your use of the term direct-to-artisan in your marketing materials. We believe this terminology infringes on our pending intellectual property applications for Vietnamese market strategies." The words hit like a physical blow. Maya had spent weeks researching trademark law, ensuring that every aspect of Vietcraft Direct was legally protected. But Rothwell Industries had resources to file frivolous legal challenges that could tie up a startup in court for months, regardless of merit. "Jennifer," Maya said carefully, "the term direct-to-artisan is not proprietary. It's a description of a business model. Our legal team disagrees. We'll be sending formal documentation shortly. I wanted to give you advance notice as a courtesy." After Jennifer hung up, Maya sat in the sudden quiet of the co-working space, understanding that everything had just changed. Rothwell Industries wasn't trying to buy her anymore. They were trying to destroy her before she could become a real threat. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd given her advance warning. Maya opened her laptop and began typing an email to every business journalist, startup blogger, and industry analyst whose contact information she'd collected over the past 9 months. Subject: David versus Goliath. How a $47 billion corporation is using trademark law to crush a 24-hour-old startup. Yesterday, I launched Vietcraft Direct, a platform connecting American consumers directly with Vietnamese artisans. In less than 24 hours, we've generated nearly $4,000 in revenue and been featured in the New York Times. Today, Rothwell Industries, a $47 billion corporation, filed a trademark dispute to shut us down. This is the story of what happens when a waitress who was told she was too stupid to understand economics proves that understanding markets matters more than having unlimited capital. Maya Chen, founder, Vietcraft Direct.
The TechCrunch article, published at 6:47 a.m. Pacific Time, made Maya's phone buzz for 6 hours straight. By noon, Business Insider, Forbes, and the Wall Street Journal had picked up the story. By evening, Maya Chen was trending on Twitter, and Vietcraft Direct had received 847 orders totaling $67,000. Maya Chen, the woman approaching her Starbucks table, was elegant in the way that marked successful venture capitalists. "I'm Sarah Kim from Elevation Partners." Maya gestured to the empty chair. "Miss Kim, I assume this is about the Rothwell situation?" "It's about your company's potential. What you've built in 24 hours typically takes companies 6 months to achieve." Sarah pulled out a tablet loaded with financial projections. "Series A funding, $2 million for 20% equity. We handle all legal defense against Rothwell's trademark challenge and provide operational capital for scaling." $2 million. 6 months ago, Maya had worried about covering rent. "What's the catch?" "No catch, but we want you to expand beyond artisan goods into broader Vietnamese luxury imports, fashion, electronics, automotive accessories. We want Vietcraft Direct to become the definitive platform for Vietnamese products in American markets." Maya felt something shift in her chest. "Miss Kim, I think you're misunderstanding what Vietcraft Direct actually is." "I'm sorry?" "You're seeing a successful e-commerce platform and assuming it should become bigger. But Vietcraft Direct isn't about selling Vietnamese products to Americans. It's about connecting Vietnamese artisans directly with American consumers who value authentic craftsmanship." Maya pulled out her laptop, showing customer analytics. "Look at these engagement metrics. Average time on site, 7 minutes 43 seconds. Repeat visitor rate, 62% in 36 hours. Read these reviews. People aren't just commenting on product quality, they're sharing stories about feeling connected to the artisans." She paused. "I don't want to compete with Rothwell Industries. I want to replace them." Before Sarah could respond, Maya's phone rang with a call from An. "Maya, you need to see this. Marcus Rothwell just gave an interview to CNBC. He called you a promising young business leader and announced that Rothwell Industries is launching Heritage Craft, their own direct-to-artisan platform. Launch date next month. They're using almost identical language to our website." Maya felt something cold crystallize in her chest. Rothwell wasn't trying to destroy her anymore. They were absorbing her success while making her irrelevant. "Sarah," Maya turned back to the venture capitalist, "what happens when Rothwell Industries offers to buy Vietcraft Direct 6 months from now?" Sarah's pause answered the question. "Exit strategies are part of any realistic business plan." "That's what I thought." Maya closed her laptop and stood up. "I'm not building Vietcraft Direct to sell it. I'm building it to prove that authentic relationships create more value than extractive capitalism." "Maya, Rothwell thinks they can copy our value proposition because they think it's a marketing copy. But you can't copy 3 months of building trust with artisans. You can't replicate social networks I've spent 9 months cultivating. And you definitely can't fake authentic storytelling that comes from actually understanding both cultures." 3 weeks later, Maya stood in Master Duke's pottery workshop in Bat Trong, watching him demonstrate glazing techniques for Vietcraft Direct's expanded artisan story series. Heritage Craft had launched with a massive marketing budget, hired prominent influencers, and featured Vietnamese products with professional photography that made Maya's videos look amateurish. "Miss Maya," Duke said in careful English, "the American company contacted me. They offered very good prices for my pottery." Maya's stomach dropped. "What did you tell them?" Duke smiled. "I told them my pottery is only for Vietcraft Direct. They asked why. I said Ms. Maya learns my name, learns my story, helps my sons join business. An American company just wants to buy pottery. Ms. Maya wants to build a relationship." He gestured around the workshop where other potters shaped clay with centuries-old techniques. Other potters also said no. "We talked at the market. We decided Miss Maya understands what we make. American companies only understand what they can sell. What if they offer even more money? Miss Maya, you think like an American business person. More money, bigger scale, faster growth? But pottery teaches different lessons.
Best pottery takes time, takes understanding between hands and clay. Cannot rush, cannot force. He picked up a vase decorated with patterns telling his family's artistic lineage. American companies think they can buy pottery and sell pottery. But pottery is a conversation between maker and user. You help start the conversation. They just want to interrupt with advertisements. That evening, Maya found an email from TechCrunch. Breaking: Heritage Craft struggles to find Vietnamese partners. Despite premium wholesale prices, Rothwell Industries was struggling to secure partnerships with established artisans committed to Maya's platform. American customers were expressing frustration with Heritage Craft's impersonal approach. One comment caught her attention. Heritage Craft feels like Amazon with Vietnamese products. Vietcraft Direct feels like having a conversation with the artist who made my vase. On called from Ho Chi Minh City. Maya, Vietcraft Direct processed 1,247 orders yesterday. Customer retention rate is now 78%. Heritage Craft's launch is actually helping us. Customers comparison shop, discover the difference between authentic artisan stories and corporate marketing, then choose us. Another email arrived from Sarah Kim. Reconsidering our conversation. Her analysts had tracked Vietcraft Direct's performance against Heritage Craft. Maya's customer acquisition costs remained near zero, while theirs were astronomical. Customer lifetime value was 3 times industry averages. Artisan retention was unprecedented. Maya opened a reply. Thank you for your revised offer. I've decided Vietcraft Direct doesn't need venture capital. It needs to stay true to the relationships that made success possible. We're not trying to build the next Amazon. We're proving the next economy can be built on authentic connections between creators and consumers who value each other's stories. Rothwell Industries will realize you can't manufacture authenticity or scale genuine relationships. When that happens, Vietcraft Direct will still be here, connecting artisans with customers who understand the difference between buying something and supporting someone. Maya Chen, founder, Vietcraft Direct. 1 year later, Maya stood before a packed auditorium at Stanford Business School, delivering the keynote address on authentic commerce in the global economy. In the front row sat Sarah Kim, taking notes. Behind her, business students who'd written case studies on Vietcraft Direct's success against Heritage Craft, which had quietly shut down after burning through $50 million in 18 months. The question isn't whether small businesses can compete with billion-dollar corporations. The question is whether authentic relationships will always be more valuable than extractive transactions. She clicked on a slide showing Vietcraft Direct's metrics. 50,000 active customers, 200 artisan partners across Vietnam, $3.2 million in annual revenue with 40% profit margins, and most importantly, a 94% customer satisfaction rate. Marcus Rothwell was right about one thing. Vietnam's economy was booming. He just misunderstood what kind of boom it would be. He thought it would be about extraction and exploitation. Instead, it became about connection and collaboration. After the presentation, Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Master Duke. A photo showed his expanded workshop with 12 apprentices learning traditional techniques. The caption, in improving English, read, "Miss Maya, my granddaughter starts university next month. Art history major. She wants to help tell artisan stories like you. Thank you for showing us that old ways can build new futures." Maya smiled, remembering the waitress who had served coffee to a billionaire who laughed at her insights about Vietnamese markets. That woman had been told she was too stupid to understand economics. Today, she'd just finished explaining to future business leaders how understanding people mattered more than understanding spreadsheets. Vietcraft Direct had won not by defeating Rothwell Industries in competition, but by making their entire approach to business obsolete. Authenticity had proven more scalable than exploitation. Relationships had generated more sustainable profits than extraction. And a Vietnamese-American waitress who listened carefully had built something more valuable than a billionaire who only knew how to take. Outside Stanford's gates, Maya opened her laptop and began writing her next blog post for Vietcraft Direct's Artisan Spotlight series. Master Duke's granddaughter had sent her a research paper about traditional Vietnamese ceramics that would make perfect reading for customers who spent an average of 8 minutes on their site, learning stories before making purchases. Some victories weren't measured in billions of dollars or market domination. Some victories were measured in changed lives, preserved traditions, and the simple recognition that business could be built on something more lasting than the lowest price and highest margin. Maya Chen had learned that understanding markets mattered more than commanding them. And in teaching that lesson to the world, she had built something far more valuable than any corporation could acquire. A bridge between cultures, built on trust, sustained by authenticity, and proven profitable through the simple revolutionary act of actually caring about the people you serve.